Cool. So, Hectic Workshops is part of our education initiative where we bring awesome instructors like Kat together every 2 weeks to teach us all something that we didn't know before. Education is a big piece of what we do here at Hectic. Obviously, for those of you familiar with the product, we also make some killer software, but probably even more important to the success of freelancers everywhere is what we're doing on the education side. So thanks for everybody attending today, and thanks for Kat presenting. I'm excited to get this started.
Awesome. So very quickly, there is a Q&A that you should be able to enter questions. So it's not rude because it's Zoom and we all love Zoom. You can jump in. If Kat says something that brings up a question for you, just type it in the Q&A and we will do all of the questions at the end. You can also drop it in the chat. We'll keep an eye on it there as well. And it is an actual genuine pleasure to introduce Kat Bogard. I have practiced saying her name since she was on the podcast. And Kat is probably, I think, one of the most reflective and thoughtful and humorous freelance people that I know. She can take something that I think, as we all know, can be really difficult and a little bit lonely and make it feel like, oh, yes, somebody else feels this alongside me. So thanks to Kat for putting that into the world in general. And I will let you take it from here. Here's
Awesome.
Kat. Yay. Snaps for Kat. I don't know. I haven't come up with a good transfer there. So here we are.
Just hand it on over.
Yes, here you are.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. It feels like a high bar. Now I'm like extra nervous, especially about humor, because there's nothing worse than someone trying to be funny. But yeah, I guess I'll share my screen right away so we can look at my fancy deck, which I've told everybody is really just a series of Schitt's Creek GIFs or GIFs, but I always hesitate to say that word. I was telling Jeff before we started, I'm like, there's a lot of hot arguments about how to pronounce that. But anyway, Hectic invited me here today to talk about finding clients, and specifically something that I shared recently, a strategy that I used when I realized my own pipeline was a little dry. Cue the horror soundtrack. So I'm just going to jump right in. A little introduction to me, even though Michelle set me up so nicely. My name is Kat Bogard. The double O, double A always trips people up, but it's just Bogard. I am a full-time freelance writer. I work mostly with software companies in the world of work. So that includes productivity, project management, employee engagement. I've worked in that space for a number of years. I've also built up sort of this side business, I like to say, of providing freelance advice, resources, tips, all that good stuff to new and established freelancers. I do that on my website, newsletter, social media. Enough of the shameless plug. Let's jump into what you're here for. So I feel like I'm a broken record. I've said this a million times lately, but things are weird out there. It's a hard time for employees. It's a hard time for freelancers. If you're like anybody, you're seeing relentless headlines about layoffs, strapped resources, budget cuts, hiring freezes. It's a scary time for everybody, and particularly a scary time for freelancers, because I think most of us have experienced that, oh crap, where's the work going to come from? Fear. It creeps in really easily, but especially when the economy feels shaky. So a few weeks ago, I think it was a few weeks, I noticed that things on my end were a little slow. My inbox was kind of eerily quiet. I have a spreadsheet where I track my booked work. I noticed the number in there was a little lower than it usually is. And that was when I started to feel like, I think something's going on. I need to look for some new work, get some more stuff in the pipeline, get some new opportunities. So when I realized I needed new work, I did something that maybe not everybody originally thinks of, which is I reached out to old clients rather than scouring job boards, sending cold emails, trying to find all sorts of new opportunities. I popped back into my old clients' inboxes with a friendly email to sort of check in a way, repitch myself and my services and see if I could drum up, some new work that way. When I originally talked about this, I had quite a few people ask, why did I opt for this approach over, blanketing the world in cold emails, looking through posted gigs, trying to find new work? There were a few reasons why I decided to opt for connecting with old clients. Part of that is I maintain really positive relationships with my clients, which I obviously recommend any freelancer does. But there's a lot of existing trust there. I think probably any freelancer is familiar with kicking off an engagement with a new client, and there's maybe a little bit of inherent skepticism in what is their feedback going to look like? Are they going to pay on time? Is this going to pan out the way that I want it to? Old clients almost feel safer in a way, in that I've done the work with them. I understand the processes. There's just some built-in trust. So that seemed like an easier route than kicking off something entirely new. Similarly, I got to skip the learning curve of a new client. I'm a writer, so when I start something with a new client, I need to get up to speed on their product, their voice and tone, their style, their audience, their processes. It's a lot. If you've ever onboarded a new client, it's a lot of work to get up to speed. Revisiting an old client and kind of sliding back in, you get to skip a lot of that learning curve. There's always a bit of a refresh, but you aren't starting from square one. And similarly, I got to avoid a lot of the onboarding and administrative headaches. I think we all love a good 27-page contract and clunky payroll form. I didn't have to do any of that because I was already in their systems, already set to go. I got to jump right in with the work rather than doing all of those pesky administrative tasks. So TLDR, revisiting old clients basically meant instant work and a quicker payday. I could jump right in with projects and getting paid. So that's why I opted to connect with old clients as opposed to just hitting the ground running, looking for new stuff. So what did it look like to revisit these old clients in a way that wasn't totally cringy? I sent an email, a highly personalized email, to a select number of clients. These were clients that I had worked with previously, and they had had pretty much sporadic work or sporadic assignments for me up until this point. It was kind of a one-off project here or there. We've never really gotten into a consistent groove. I went through my old client roster and picked out some of those ones that I enjoyed working with, but we hadn't really gotten into a consistent cadence. And those are the ones I chose to reach out to with a single email. Again, highly personalized, which we'll get to a little later. But I sent that email to, I believe it was a total of 6 clients. And within a day or two, I had booked over $3,000 in new projects right off the bat. So it was obviously effective. And I think that always leads people to wonder, what the heck did this email look like? I have a screenshot of, I'll call it the skeleton or the bare bones of it. Because again, I always hesitate when I recommend templated outreach, because the key with reaching out to clients is personalization. But I do want to give you an idea of what this looked like on a general level. So I have a screenshot here. I basically sent some variation of this to the clients I wanted to connect with. And it said, I won't read it to you because you're not a kindergartner and you can probably read it as I'm talking. But to talk through the high points, there was a friendly introduction just to reconnect. And then I was very explicit with my request, hi, do you need any work? That's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make with outreach when they want, new opportunities or new work. They kind of talk around the issue and the other person ends up, closing out of the email, not having any idea what the heck you want. If you're asking for work, ask for work. That's why my second sentence says, I'm reaching out to see if you need any freelance hands on some client assignments. And then I was really honest about kind of what I was dealing with. I enjoyed their assignments. I'd love to, have any work if they had any to send my way. So I sent, again, some variation of this to all of my clients. It was highly personalized. I feel like I can't shout that enough because I want everybody to take that away. But it was short. It was simple. I sent it out to, again, 6 clients. And the results were actually pretty impressive. Like I mentioned before, I booked $3,000 worth of work pretty much instantaneously. I received positive responses from 5 past clients. I didn't hear from one of them. Don't know why. but I like to be transparent about that because it happens even to established freelancers, even in relationships that you've had previously. My guess is the contact isn't there anymore, but I got 5 positive responses, booked $3,000 worth of work. And I think the best part is I haven't had to do something like this again. Since I sent this email, I've continued to receive recurring assignments from those clients. So what it did was basically like reignite that relationship, put me, kind of top of mind again, that now they've continued to send work my way. It didn't generate just one-off assignments and projects. It really kickstarted a beneficial, ongoing relationship. So if you want to send your own kind of, I call it a magic email, I want to talk about a few things to think about before you just blanket the world in your message. The first one is start small. I think when you realize that your pipeline is dry and you need some new work, it's easy to just like put as much out there as possible. But I often caution freelancers when doing any sort of applying, outreach, any sort of prospecting to generate new business, ask yourself, what would you do if every single person said yes? And that's an optimistic way to think about things, but you don't want to go so far the other direction that you end up completely overbooked, overwhelmed, overcommitted. So I always think it's better to start with a select few. That's why I combed through my own list of clients to pick out the ones that I really felt like I stood the best shot with, the ones that I, had still a good relationship with, that I enjoyed the work. I'd be really selective and take this slow. Reach out to a handful, see who you hear back from. If you still need more, like reach out to a few more. And maybe if you don't have that large of client roster, that isn't as like doable, but I would just say you're not taking your afternoon to send 25 emails. You are way better off sending 2 very thoughtful, highly personalized, meaningful emails than to send the same copy paste version to everybody in your contact list. On a similar note, personalization. Have I mentioned that already? This is not your generic copy paste, could send it to anybody outreach. Like I said, you can start with the template that I included. I think it's a good, starting point, but every single email that I sent was highly personalized. Maybe I included, a personal anecdote because I knew they had kids and wondered how they were making it through this like terrible illness season. Or maybe I mentioned a little bit about the previous project we had done together. They were highly personalized. I didn't want any client who I had an existing relationship feel like existing relationship with to feel like I had put them on some email blast list and was just sending the same message to everybody I could find. So personalization is key. I also think an important thing to mention that people forget about is my email was incredibly candid. I'll skip back a couple slides to this specific paragraph. To be totally candid, things have been a little unsteady with a few of my recurring clients amidst, gestures broadly. So I have a little more wiggle room in my schedule and workload than I usually do. I think sometimes clients can wonder, like, why now? Why are you getting back in touch? And I wanted to address that head on by being totally transparent of like, hey, like everybody, things are a little tough for me right now. I also think it's a point that resonates with a lot of people. Times are weird for everybody, not just freelancers. A lot of my clients are in tech, which is an industry that's obviously on shaky footing right now. So I did not want to try to avoid the issue, sweep it under the rug, pretend like everything was great, swoop in with some really aggressive sales pitch of here's what I can do for you. I just wanted to be honest, human to human. Things are weird. I could use a little more work. I've supported you before. How can we work together again? I don't think there's anything wrong with a little vulnerability, but as always, do what you're comfortable with. These emails need to sound like they come from you and not from me. I also, at the very end of my email, provided an out. You can see I capped it off with, as always, no pressure from my end. I know it's a really weird time for everybody. Regardless of if you have any work for me or not, I'm happy to be connected and I'm looking forward to staying in touch. So with any sort of cold outreach, warm outreach, whatever it is, I'm always a big proponent of giving people an easy out, a way to say like, great to hear from you, nothing right now, but let's stay in touch. I think it reduces awkwardness. It also reduces a sense of obligation. Tying back to that vulnerability piece, I think people feel inclined to help. And I wanted to provide an out so that people didn't feel like, oh man, I better give this girl some work or she's going to be like searching her couch cushions for spare change. So I wanted to just give them an opportunity to, you know, kind of back out gracefully and say, we don't have anything right now, but like, you know, let's stay on each other's radar. This email paid off really well for me, both, you know, literally and figuratively, but it's certainly not the only thing you can do if you feel like you need to drum up some new freelance work. And as times have continued to be a little rocky, I've seen some different freelancers doing really, you know, creative things to kind of get some new work into their own freelance pipeline. I've received a few emails from freelancers who have just connected with me to, again, be very transparent and honest about the fact that their own business is a little slower than usual. And in that same email, they get really specific about like what they do, what services they offer, what clients they serve, what they're looking for, and usually end it with a friendly, like, if you hear of anything, you see anything, I would love if you would, you know, recommend me or tag me or send me a link or whatever it is. I think as a freelancer, it's easy to think of other freelancers as your competition. And there is some truth to that. Like, we're all out here looking for work, but the freelance community is actually incredibly supportive and encouraging. And so I think it's well worth connecting with other freelancers to see if you can strike up a beneficial relationship to not only generate work, but to also, you know, have someone to commiserate with. Freelancing can be lonely and isolating, so it's nice to have a community around you. I would caution you though, I've given this tip several times, and then undoubtedly I always have a few people swoop into my inbox with some form of, let's have a relationship and you can give me work. A relationship is still a relationship. This is not about making an ask right away. So if you're already connected with some freelancers and you have a friendly relationship and some rapport, I think it's okay to kind of pitch your services. But this, again, I wouldn't drop into every freelancer's DMs asking for work. Focus on, you know, a friendly relationship, some rapport first before just making an ask. I've also seen several freelancers and remarkably like experienced, established, well-known freelancers post to social media that they have openings in their schedule. I included 2 screenshots of tweets on this slide from Elise Dobson and Kaylee Moore, 2 of my freelance friends here on the interwebs. They're both incredibly successful, incredibly established in their niches, very well known. And they tweeted these things relatively recently. Elise announced that she had a very rare opening, and the last time she had space was 1.5 years ago. She included her website. Kaylee said, you know, that she had an opening that month as well. I do like to point out here too, you can see that they're incredibly honest and specific about what they do. They're not just looking for any freelance opportunity. Elise said she writes about, you know, e-commerce marketing and retail. Kaylee said she writes for, you know, e-commerce or SaaS companies and the type of content she does. So whenever you're trying to promote your business, get more work, I would be specific about what you're looking for and what you offer. That feels a little counterintuitive because when things feel slow, it's tempting to just try to cast a wide net and gather all the work you can, but you're still looking for stuff that is the best fit for you so you can do the best job on it and hopefully get more recurring work. And finally, asking for client referrals is a big one that I see freelancers skipping. You can touch base with past clients, and even if you don't think they have work for you, ask for a referral or a recommendation. They might be able to, you know, recommend you to somebody in your industry or your niche who does have work. They might be able to write a LinkedIn recommendation, a testimonial that you can include with your cold outreach or put on your website. It can be kind of hard to ask for these things as a freelancer, but they're so important. Nobody's going to toot your own horn for you. You need to ask for it. So that's another great way to generate some work and just kind of generally work on some business development and get, you know, some quotes and fodder you can use as you continue to like grow your business and find new opportunities. Hey, I feel like I talked so much and so fast, but that was, you know, a quick whip through this email that I sent to drum up, you know, all this new work. It's been super beneficial for me. I hope if you try something similar that it is beneficial for you, because things are weird, but we're going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I also included where you can find me on here. I'm everywhere online, unfortunately. So you can find me there.
I will toot your horn for you. Ugh, I didn't like saying that.
Yeah, I know it's such a
but
weird word.
but for sure sign up for Kat's newsletter. It never misses. It is an incredible resource. So definitely sign up for that. Okay, so a couple questions. The first one I want to get to.
Stop sharing my screen while we do this, or should I
Either
keep it
way,
shared? All right.
give
Maybe
people
I'll-
enough time to find you.
All right.
and
Yeah, I'll
follow
leave
you.
that there for a while. I just didn't want to distract everybody with, Alexis making her hand gesture.
So the first, a couple of questions in one, about follow-up. So was there kind of a purposeful reason you didn't follow up with kind of that sixth person? And in that same vein, do you have, like a general sense of, I'll just read the actual question. With emails to old clients you haven't talked to in a while, do you follow up, and how often do you follow up?
Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to follow up with, obviously the 5 responded within days. The 6 did not respond. The primary reason that I did not follow up is because the outreach with the other 5 was so successful that then I was booked and I didn't have time for anything else anyway. So I didn't want to pop into their inbox and essentially say, do you have any work that I can't do for you? So I skipped the 6th one. That being said, I didn't have to follow up. That's not to say that you won't have to. Like I said, times are weird. Companies are dealing with a lot. People are trying to do more with less. They're busy. If you want to follow up and check in because you haven't heard anything, I don't think there's any shame in doing so one time. And I would say at least a week after your initial outreach. And in that same email, again, just be like, wanted to check in on this just one time. Again, no pressure. Like hope you're doing well sort of thing. Keep it very light, not pushy. I don't think there's anything wrong with one follow-up. I would not continue to pop into somebody's inbox being like, remember when I asked you for work? I'm still looking for work. Where's the work? Just one follow-up and give them at least a week because things are tough everywhere.
I love that. How about, any tips for getting over the vulnerability of sharing that everything is not perfect?
Whiskey. No.
A theme. I sense a theme.
Yeah. Any tips for getting over it? I mean, I'm really racking my brain to think of tips because as Michelle will quickly tell you, I don't have a lot of issues with vulnerability. Like personally, I'm like pretty out there with what's going on and what I'm struggling with and what I'm feeling, but I also recognize like it's hard. And I think it's particularly hard in, a business relationship when you're really trying to present yourself as somebody who's worth the money and somebody who knows your stuff. So it's kind of hard to say like, nobody else wants to pay me. Do you? That being said, these past few years have been a ride, and I think things not going well is now just a part of the collective human experience. So I think instead of looking at it as your own flaw, it's actually an opportunity to really bond with somebody else. And I've found whenever I'm candid about these sort of things, whether it's on social media, in my newsletter, in a personal email, it really resonates with people and almost gives them permission to say the same thing back. So instead of looking at it as, a point of shame, look at it as almost an opportunity to like serve another person, to, give them the chance to say like, hey, I'm struggling too. Like, thank you so much for not pretending everything's perfect. I mean, it is really something that I think we are all familiar with now. So it's not a character flaw. It's just the world we're living in. I don't know if that was helpful or was just a bunch of psychobabble.
No, I love that idea of just like try it and see how it goes too. Like maybe with something small, I love that you kind of implied that. Yeah.
And as always, like it might take you a bit of time to like find your comfort level. I would never advocate sharing something that you are just not comfortable putting out there for the sake of some sort of like false vulnerability. It all has to come back to your own comfort level, but I also think we would just all be a lot better off if we didn't feel this constant pressure to act like we have it all together, because nobody does. Literally nobody.
Yeah. And I think there was something about the last 3 years that um, maybe hastened the demise of that way of thinking about professionalism.
Mhm.
I mean, I think maybe it's still around some places, but I'm like you, Kat, and that I tend to be vulnerable for the most part. Like, yeah, I'm just not feeling well today, or my kids were crazy. Sorry, I've been a bit scattered or whatever.
Mhm.
But I have noticed that people are often people on the client side are more empathetic. I continue to be surprised at how human people will
Mm,
be, like, if I give them the chance.
Mhm.
So there's that sense in where you kind of have to lead with vulnerability or transparency, and then lo and behold, other people will kind of follow that lead. And I just think that's a better way to do business anyway. But I think
Mhm.
it's just like to your point, it's good to keep that in mind when you're reaching out and you're afraid you're somehow going to lose clout or authority just
Mhm.
because you have some availability in your like production queue.
Mhm.
It's nothing to be embarrassed about that you have availability to help somebody with work,
Yeah, and like I
you know?
said, times have been challenging for everybody, and I love that you said that it, can honestly, I think, strengthen relationships more than like be a disservice to your business,
mhm.
because it
Yeah.
is such a shared experience. And I'm not trying to hop on any client call and pretend like my baby wasn't home with strep throat last week, because he was. Okay, and I'm tired.
So good. I love this question. It's in here a couple times. I've heard the lean on your network past clients for finding new work, but what if you have a limited number of past clients with the right budgets and type of work for your current positioning?
Mm. That's a challenging one. I would definitely, lean on some of the other tactics in terms of asking for referrals, connecting with other freelancers, seeing if you can kind of broaden your reach that way and find, some other clients. I also think, I don't know enough about your services and your prices, but seeing if there are some of those clients who are willing to work with you, but maybe don't have the right budget or the right work or whatever it is, seeing if you can kind of collaborate in some way to either adjust the scope of the projects that they have, chip in with a part of it, maybe, consulting in some way. I think it's easy to get stuck in a certain mindset of exactly what you offer. And if clients don't want that exact thing, then they're not a fit for you. But I think particularly as things shift and get a little more challenging, there's room for more collaboration with clients, particularly since so many have strapped resources and might need some help. Seeing if they're open to a conversation to find if there are maybe alternative ways that you could work together.
I like that. It's related in that question, but kind of recommending some good places to look. I know you have in your newsletter, never misses, in there, like you have a course that you offer. I'm butchering that. Is it a course
It is,
about
yeah.
finding new leads?
Mhm.
I'll include a link to that in the follow-up, but feel free to talk about it for a minute if you'd like.
Oh, I'll give all the secrets. I'm not trying to steal anybody's money. I'm not a good secret keeper. So places to look, you mean for, I'm assuming, posted freelance opportunities, or?
Yeah, or just new clients in general,
Okay,
I think is the question.
let me channel all of my best advice into something that isn't like total word vomit. So freelance job boards can be effective. I particularly like, if you're a writer, Peak Freelance, PEAK Freelance. They round up a lot of great writing opportunities. So does like ProBlogger. I've never used like an Upwork or a Fiverr. Nothing against anybody who does, but I think sometimes they can be a bit of a like race to the bottom with some of those clients. So definitely scour job boards. I also am a big fan of searching. This is how I find a lot of the gigs that I include in my newsletter, searching LinkedIn, Twitter for key terms. So using the search bar and typing in, looking for a freelance writer, looking for a freelance photographer, need a freelance editor, need a podcast producer, whatever it is, searching key terms on Twitter and LinkedIn and filtering by posts, sort by latest, and you will see people who have posted using those terms. I find a ton of gigs of people who just post to their networks on Twitter or LinkedIn, asking for recommendations for a freelancer. And those are great opportunities to slide into the old DMs and pitch yourself. Similarly, this is another tip that I offer in the course, but we'll give to you for free. If you have a client that you have either worked with or would love to work with and is like firmly in your niche, there's that word again. Say it's like, I don't know, for me, I write for Trello and I love writing for Trello. They're an incredible client of mine. I love the content. I love the company. I love the mission. If you go on to like Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, or whatever it is, and find their company page, their company account, social media platforms almost always give you suggested accounts of other places to follow. Check out those companies. They're very related to the client that you love. And I have found numerous clients that way by having them suggested to me on social media. And then I, reach out with some very thoughtful, finely tuned cold outreach, providing samples of similar work that I've done for clients in their space. But that's a great one to also churn up like other companies, publications, outlets, whatever it is that you weren't aware of, but that are closely related to clients that you love.
That was amazing. I
Thank
don't know
you.
how I have literally never thought about just searching on LinkedIn or Twitter for need a podcast editor. That's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, most people turn to the job board on LinkedIn, which there's stuff there too. But I particularly love sorting through the posts because you would be surprised at the number of people who go on there and post like, we need a website designer for this nonprofit website. We need a podcast producer. We need somebody to do social media graphics. And you can find so many posts there from people, even often from like very established companies, look for freelance help that way, as opposed to creating a job posting.
It's brilliant.
Hectic has put out a few posts, on LinkedIn when we've hired freelancers for this and that. And I mean, even searching something like hiring, that's just a genius tip. And of course, where my mind went was, I bet you could wire up some Zapier automations and have some of these opportunities automatically populate in a G Sheet. And or you could just
Your mind is very different than mine because I'm over here with like my stone tablet and my chisel.
Twitter. No, but you brought something up, which is like when we're anxious about what might happen in the future, it's like our resourcefulness and imagination's like shut down. But yet there are so many opportunities available to us if we can like reframe this scary situation where what if I come up short this month, and instead say like, if I were going to get in, buckle up and do some crazy creativity, and I just assumed there's plenty of opportunity out there for me, how would I go about finding it? And so I just love the way you approached it. It's like, hey, use Twitter's recommendations to, and then I want to point out one other thing. Like when you do the cold outreach, you kind of alluded to this, but it's like, there's always a way to stand out with highly personalized cold outreach in a way. Like I have friends now and like venture partners and a few other really important relationships that we met because one or the other person wrote a really good email that stood out. And so it's like, it still works. Like cold outreach still works as long as you do it with personality and vulnerability and empathy and humor, and it's you, and it's not some template you found from a YouTuber.
Yeah, cold outreach gets such a bad rap, but it can be so effective. And I do want to say one thing when I say cold outreach, because every time I see this makes me just want to like throw my computer through the window. Is people post on LinkedIn or Twitter, like looking for a freelance graphic designer, and people just comment, I'm interested. That is not enough. That's not going to do anything for you. Like you can absolutely comment on the post, but you better be reaching out with a DM and email that includes your samples and your website and your experience and is friendly and human. Please do not just be like, I'm interested. That makes the potential client do all the work. You are waiting on them to then find your comment, reach out to you, ask you questions. If you want the work, you put in the legwork. That's all. Goodbye.
And
So good. Mic drop.
I will also say that, like, if in the post itself someone says, please do not DM me,
Yeah.
instead go fill out this form.
Hmm.
Having been on the receiving end of lots and lots of DMs when I explicitly ask people to not DM, please just fill out the form.
Just follow, honestly,
Follow the
just follow
instructions,
the instructions. If they
please.
say they want 3 writing samples, send 3, not none, not 30. Just prove you can read and follow the instructions.
So good. I want to
This
get
is
to
a
this
very-
question.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, it gets me fired up.
I love it. I do want to get to this question from Kara. Have you ever gone back to a client that you weren't excited about because you needed the work? Or in that case, would you try to find a new client instead?
I would not. I should preface this, like, think about why you weren't excited about them in the first place. But in most instances, unless I'm like very desperate, I would not go back to a client that, like, either the revision process was a nightmare, they consistently paid me late, I didn't feel like they like trusted or respected my work. I think that's a slippery slope. And like, money is nice, but so is your mental well-being. So I would resist the urge to like go crawl back to clients that were a real struggle to work with. And in those cases, probably instead use some of those strategies we mentioned to find some new clients and some new opportunities that maybe you'll have a smoother relationship with.
Love it. Sarah asks, I feel like I'm on a show now.
Yeah.
I'm working mostly with solopreneurs. Do you have any tips to pitching to agencies and mid-sized companies? Is there any difference?
Agencies and mid-sized companies, any difference in comparison with pitching to solopreneurs?
Yes, I believe that is the question.
I mean, if we're going to like emphasize our human to human approach here, I don't really think there's going to be any difference in terms of your actual outreach, because again, it doesn't matter if you're pitching a solopreneur or a content manager at a software company, like, they're all people. So I don't think you need to alter your approach so much. I think the bigger challenge with enterprise companies or agencies is finding the right person. And that can be a challenge, but again, I would turn to LinkedIn and Twitter to see if you can kind of, on LinkedIn, you can filter through a company's employees, search for keywords and employee titles to try to find the right person to reach out to. And in your initial outreach, use one of the lines that's like, if you're not the right person to get in touch with about freelance needs, like, I'd love to be directed to whoever is. But otherwise, in terms of the actual outreach, I don't think there's any difference whether you're pitching a solopreneur or a, content manager or, growth manager at a company.
Love that.
And there's one thing I'll add to that. Most people here are solopreneurs. The pain that somebody is feeling on any particular day as a solopreneur is different than what, say, a marketing manager or content manager would be in a bigger company. And so you do have an opportunity to like recognize that their experiences are different than yours in terms of what's going to resonate with them, right? They're not worried about getting a paycheck next week unless they're in tech in the last 3 months. But there's different things that drive them, right? For a marketing manager, finding high quality talent that is reliable is going to be really important. Whereas, for a solopreneur, just getting the things done this week to keep their business running are important. So like, I think just having some awareness of the audience and kind of where they are at in life is important.
Okay, I think this is probably the last question we have time for. What are your thoughts on the value first approach? Provide some value at no cost with expectation it will lead to paid work. Okay, maybe we do have time for another question.
That was the answer.
I'm sorry, I'm not taking questions at this time.
No comment.
Yeah, I have no comment. I mean, I did it. I feel like I need to preface this with that. Like, I wrote for free when I got started because I couldn't find anybody to pay me. That said, like, I am just really a big critic of like unpaid test assignments. I actually wrote a newsletter on unpaid test assignments a while ago. I just think it sets up the relationship in the wrong way, and that, like, I mean, people are always like equating freelancers to plumbers and whatnot, but like, the reality is you're not going to ask your plumber to come fix your toilet to prove that he's worthy of fixing your sink next time. Like, it's just, I don't know why this has gotten applied to some service providers and not to others, but I am not a big fan of providing free value up front. That said, it is on the freelancer to then set themselves up in a way that they, have established, their brand, so to speak, in a way that you already inherently seem qualified and trustworthy. So that means having, your online presence polished up, being really selective about what work samples you share, and really selling yourself that way, and that you don't have to complete something for free to prove that you can do the work, that you already have sort of the marketing materials set up to support you in that way. But otherwise, like, the value for free upfront, I've heard too many horror stories of places just running with that and ghosting freelancers, and you never hear from them again. And it's just a mess.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your time and your super thoughtful questions and thoughts on whiskey as well, as always. We'll send the full replay, and don't forget to follow Kat in all the places. And we will be back here in 2 weeks with more about getting some new clients. So we're excited to see you and chat with you in 2 weeks after you did your taxes. Sorry, I said it. I'm sorry I said the word taxes.
Wet blanket.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Way to end it on a high note.
Really killing it over here.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. It was great to chat with you. Time for our bi-weekly awkward Zoom wave, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care.